Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Pot of Gold podcast, where we talk about finances, wealth generation, and real estate investing. Today on the show, we have Sione Inoke, owner of Four Sons Properties and a wholesaler that runs his business out of Utah. He's also the host with Becca Brown of Squad Up Utah, a real estate meetup that's hosted every first Tuesday of the month. With wholesaling, where did your real estate journey lead you? How did this all start to happen?
Yeah, primarily focused on wholesaling and mainly focused just in Utah. So what got me started was I'll try to keep it brief because it's a pretty long story, but my wife and I had talked about getting rental properties. In her previous marriage, her ex-in-laws had properties, and she had kind of seen what cash flow looks like, but they had these properties forever. And so we had talked about it briefly, and then I didn't know what that even looked like. And so Facebook spies on us, and there was a little advertisement that popped up that said, "Hey, come learn about real estate investing." And I was like, okay, cool. So went to that little free get together, and then they said, "Oh, you should come to our 3-day conference and you'll learn way more." And so I jumped in and paid the price for their 3-day conference, and it was that's what opened my eyes to what real estate investing could be or was. And so most of the time they talked about flipping at the conference, and how to flip and how to run your numbers and how to find properties and blah, blah, blah. And so I left the conference thinking I was going to be a flipper. But they also wanted you to pay $50,000 to have their resources and their coaching and their tools and all this stuff. But so I was tempted to lay down the $50,000, but I was like, man, that's bad debt right now, and I didn't want to do that. So I found some free resources and books, podcasts, and then on the podcasts and the books, they talked about going to local RIA meetings, which stands for Real Estate Investor Association meetings. And so I attended a couple. I went to one in December, and it was kind of like an open, you walk into this big room and there were just chairs, tables and chairs set up around the room with different types of investors and what their specialty was, like flips and short-term rentals and development and using IRAs and blah, blah, blah. So they had this room, and it was just like a speed dating type event.
Okay, interesting.
And I wanted to talk to the Airbnb lady that had the table set up, but she had a big line. And right next to the Airbnb lady was this gentleman sitting at a table, and it said creative finance, and nobody was sitting there talking to him. And I was like, well, might as well talk to him since nobody else is talking to him. So I sat down, told him I wanted to be a flipper. And he's like, yeah, I don't think you really want to do that. And said flippers or people that come into real estate investing and thinking flipping is the way to go. He said that's the biggest way in and out of real estate investing, especially if you don't know what you're doing. And so I was offended a little bit because the conference had ended, and it's been 4 months of me just studying flipping and knowing what to do. And I was just focused on learning about that. Then when I sit down and talk to him and he tells me I don't want to be a flipper, I was like, you don't know what you're talking about. But then I let him talk to me about what he did and what creative financing was, and told me about wholesaling. And that's where I was my mind was blown. I was like, wait, what? You sold a property for full price and still made $50,000 on it? How is that even possible? And, because we're taught in wholesaling that you have to get things at a discount. And so you have to sell them at a discount in order to make money. But he was telling me, no, I sold the property for full price or more and still made $50,000. Oh, and I still make, $600 cash flow, and I'm going to make this much at the end. And it's blew my mind. So his name is Jeff Rappaport. To this day, he's one of my GOAT mentors that I look up to and appreciate so much. And he ran a podcast called the Creative Finance Podcast. And I recommend going to that one and listening to the first 7 episodes if you get a chance to learn about creative finance and what it's about. And Jeff Rappaport is so important in my life. So he taught me how to wholesale, taught me what it was, And literally, I just did exactly what he told me to do. You know, a lot of times wholesalers get in and they're like they hear somebody say, "Oh, driving for dollars," or just call or text or whatever, but then they don't do it. And so they try to make it more complicated than it really is. And so that's the one thing I would say is like, whoever you're learning from, if you're getting into it for the first time, just do it. Whoever's telling you to do it, just do it how they're telling you to do it. And you're going to learn lessons. And like, it's okay if you mess up, but like, you'll still learn. So
I think that's awesome because I've actually been learning about this concept recently, that there's two different types of education. There's what they call declarative knowledge, which is book learning, things that you can learn from a book and then recite back to other people. And then there's procedural knowledge. And the procedural knowledge is knowing how to do things, which is where the title of that book, You Can't Teach a Kid How to Ride a Bike at a Seminar, goes into this procedural knowledge. And if you don't go out and take action on the things that you're learning, you're never going to get the procedural knowledge.
Yep.
Even if you fill your head with the declarative knowledge.
Yep.
And so it's really important you go out and do things and to kind of give the audience a little bit of context about why that's important. You might not understand it at first, but as you do the repetitions, it'll start to clarify.
Yep. And I've been doing this now for 3.5, 4 years. I don't know. A lot of wholesalers that come up to me and ask me for advice, and I'll tell them like I'll show them how I started and just do exactly what I did to get my first deal. But most of the time, I'll tell them that, and they don't actually try to do it. Right?
Don't go do it. Got it.
So, but it is cool when I do see people doing it and taking the action. And that's been super exciting to see their growth and their like belief in it. And so it's really cool.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. Just out of curiosity and for the sake of the audience, what did you do to go get your first deal?
The company's not around, so I don't think I'll get in trouble anymore. But I sold credit repair for a company, and they just helped people fix their credit. Now, I'd worked there, I think 7 years total. And so the whole time I'd been working there, I didn't realize like, oh, I'm actually talking to motivated sellers. Like once I understood what a motivated seller was,
Yeah,
I realized, oh man, like I have a motivated seller I'm talking to. So this might get me in trouble, but I would talk to these people. They tell me why they want to fix their credit. And some of them are like, oh, I'm losing my house. It's getting foreclosed on and I need to fix my credit so I can get another house, later down the road.
have a place to live.
Yep. Just different experiences, but different conversations. But yeah, so what I would do is I would like take down their information and then call or text them after work. Be like, hey, we talked earlier. You said you were looking to fix your credit, but you also said you're looking to sell a property or your property is in distress or whatever. And so granted, I didn't know how to have these conversations, right?
Yeah.
Like they would tell me, oh yeah, I'm interested in selling, but then I would freeze. And that's where a lot of people get stuck. And I ended up getting this deal in Clear Lake, Wisconsin. I'll never forget it because this guy he just wanted to get out of his house. And even on the call earlier when I was talking to him about his credit, he's like, man, I just want to sell this place and get out of here. And he's like, I own it outright. Like, I was like, well, what would you sell your property for? He's like, $10,000. And I would just walk away. And I was like, well, $10,000 for a house, that seems like it's a pretty good deal. So hit him up after, and we ended up actually paying him $35,000. But we helped him out, and we ended up making. So Jeff Rappaport helped me with this one. We ended up selling it for $75,000. So there's a $40,000 assignment fee difference, and I got 5,000 of it. And like when people hear like that there's a $40,000 assignment fee and I only got $5,000, they're like, oh, you got screwed over. And I'm like, no, like didn't. It was the best $5,000 in my life because it became reality, right?
Yeah.
And so that gave me confidence that I could do this on my own. And so my first solo deal came from driving for dollars. I don't know if people can see this, but I'll pull up my phone. I was trying to have my phone be the camera for the podcast because it's a little bit better, but like I don't know if you can see. There's
Satellite image of some kind?
lots of blue dots on the thing.
Okay.
That's Google Maps. Like people always say, and there are software like apps that you can use to do driving for dollars, but that was how I found out a way for me to do driving for dollars, because I didn't have, like, I had a little bit of money, but not like a ton. I had more time than I had money. And so that's what I did. I used Google Maps, free app. Everybody uses it. And I would drive on my way home from work. I would pick a neighborhood, drive through the neighborhood, and just pin these ugly houses on Google Maps and save them to a folder that was driving for dollars. That was it. That was literally all I did.
Okay. So just for clarification, you're picking different suburbs to go through or neighborhoods.
Yep.
And you're picking houses that look like they're run down, or maybe the yard is in disrepair.
Yep. So driving for dollars, that's what you're doing. You're driving around and or driving for deals or whatever. You're driving around and looking for the more distressed properties, right? As a wholesaler, we're looking for distress.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't necessarily mean that the house has to be in distress, but when you're driving for dollars, that's all you're looking for. So broken windows. They have 5 broken down cars in the yard. It looks like they haven't, like their grass is just weeds and like garbage all over the place. If they have a tarp on the roof, if, it just looks like it's beat up, just like distress, signs of distress, physical distress on the house.
Something an HOA would be very upset about.
Yep. If it's in an HOA neighborhood, yes. And that's the cool thing too, is like, even in like $1 million neighborhoods, like you can still drive around. You can see like, okay, this house is way less taken care of than the 2 around it, right? So you can still find distressed properties that way, just by looking at like the difference of this house in this neighborhood makes it stand out, like it's not taken care of compared to all the other neighbors.
When you're driving for dollars, you're going to see houses with like realtor signs in the yards. Are you ignoring those kinds of houses?
Sorry, you broke up.
Yeah, I was just wondering, if you're driving for dollars, you're going to encounter houses that have a sign in the front yard from like a realtor or something. Are you ignoring those houses?
Not necessarily. No, not necessarily. Because if it's got a sign in it in front, like you can just call the realtor right there. Like you can literally just, there's a lead and it's already actively ready to sell. Doesn't mean that, it's going to meet the criteria for what we need as a wholesaler, what we're looking for as an investment property, but it's a way to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And just start the conversation. And you can even pull it up on Zillow, pull up the address on Zillow if you have a minute. Just be like, oh, it's been on the market for 150 days. Like, okay, so it looks like it's in distress. It's been on the market for a long time, which is also a sign of distress.
Yep.
So that at least can introduce you to starting and having a conversation, right? So again, the sellers may be out of their minds and they may be asking for way too much money, but at least you're taking action and having a conversation about a potential property.
Yeah, and you're
That's the
learning.
other thing when driving for dollars. I had one wholesaler that she just didn't know which properties to put on this driving for dollars list. Like she'd be driving around and she's like, I don't know, does this one qualify? Does this one qualify? I was like, doesn't matter, pin it. Like if you think it might qualify or might not qualify, pin it. Like,
yep. If you
what's the
go
worst
follow
thing
up with it and it's a no, well, then you just move on to the next one.
Right. Like, don't overthink it. Like, you just pin an ugly house or a property that looks like it's in distress, pin it. And then the next step after you pin it is you go home and skip trace it and you learn what that means. And then you text and ask them if they want to sell, or call and ask them if they want to sell. Like, it's step by step. But people worry about step number 12 and they haven't even done step number 1, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. That's one of those things. I think a lot of people, like you said, they overcomplicate it, and part of complication comes just from overthinking things.
Yep.
And not doing anything with what you already have. I'd like to go back to the thing that you said about motivated sellers, and because of the things that we have learned and understand, we know that means one of 2 things. You either have someone who's in pain or is looking for some type of gain. And that's why we're looking for distressed properties in this case, is because we're looking for people that might have some kind of a pain point that would motivate them to sell their property.
Yeah, to that point, and being a part of Sub 2 and following Pace and everybody, like obviously we know there's only two reasons people will try to sell, right? There's either a pain or they're looking to gain something, right? And like the pain points are easier to identify, right? And easier to I guess solve their problems. The gain ones are, motivated by more greed, and so you have to appease that a little bit, but sometimes their greed and ego get in the way, so it's harder to make deals on those types of properties, right? Yeah, motivation like looks different to different people. Divorce, pre-foreclosures, tax liens, and there's a whole, you can find so many different YouTube videos on what motivated sellers might look like. So
yeah
I don't want to spend too much time talking about that, but yeah, like we're looking for distressed properties, motivated sellers, and trying to solve their problems. That's all.
Yeah. And it's really cool. I think that you learn the questions you need to ask by having the conversations too, because each of these situations is going to have nuance to it. And so, yes, you can follow a script to some extent, but you're a human talking to a human. They're going to have human experiences, and you have familiarity with human experiences because that's what you are. So lean into what your past experience is, build rapport, and then look for solutions to problems for people.
Yeah, and I think like that's where I think studying how to have conversations can come in handy, is like that's where you learn that kind of skill from books, right?
Mm-hmm.
But again, you get an idea of how to have those conversations, but then you also have to take action with it. And you're going to mess up. You're going to say the wrong thing. You're going to, overpromise something that, and that's fine. Like you learn, like you're going to learn. That's it. It doesn't matter if you did it right or wrong. You learn more when you do it wrong.
Yeah.
It might be embarrassing and like a little humbling, but yeah.
You quickly find out that you don't know as much as you thought you did.
Yep.
But I like something that Tom Bilyeu says. He says, I hope I pronounced his name right. I'm not positive I did. He says that failure is the most information-rich data stream on the planet. And so one of the things you're going to have to do when you're doing things like this and taking action and you fail is you have to look at what you did and think about why it worked or why it didn't. And maybe you're only going to get 5% of the things that you did that actually move the needle, but you have to learn what those are so you can repeat them and then avoid the things that were like really like, okay, that did not work. I should avoid doing that. Yeah. You have to think back on it, because if you just go keep taking action and you don't think about your results you're getting, you're not going to make progress either.
Nope. And that's in every aspect of life. I mean, relationships and being a parent and, being a good friend, like you're going to make mistakes. But the important thing is like, okay, what did I learn and how can I get better?
Yeah.
If you can just focus on that after the failed experience, like you're going to grow so much.
Talking about parenting, my son decided he wanted to pick his nose recently, and I made a big deal of it. I was like, ew, that's gross. The problem is he thought that was funny. And so I learned that, okay, I don't go with that reaction or that result, because all I'm doing is encouraging him to repeat the behavior. That was a lesson I had to learn firsthand.
For sure. And that's definitely one of those things where it's like, oh, okay.
This principle of action is really essential. You got to make sure that you're going out and making mistakes. And I know that sucks sometimes, because you have to go through the embarrassment or the shame of looking kind of stupid for a while, but it's worth it in the end, because you start to learn and you get to be better at what you're trying to do. And eventually it pays off monetarily as well.
Yeah. And I think that more than anything, getting into something like wholesaling or just real estate, you're focused on gator lending, right? And bridging the gap between the difference, right? And so no matter what you're looking to do in real estate, and there's a million different ways you can make money in real estate, like a million different ways. There was a post by Pace the other day, and he said just on one flip, he factored in like the average people that make money on the deal is like 51 people.
Yeah,
Like,
it's a
on one
crazy
deal.
amount.
And so it's like, you don't necessarily have to be the flipper, but look at that. There's 51 different ways to make money on that one real estate property, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, the one thing, no matter what avenue you're looking to get into with real estate, is like mindset is like the biggest thing. Not only mindset, but like inner work. Like, and I say that just because I've struggled with my inner work.
Yeah.
And so I like it's been the biggest difference is working on yourself and working on your mindset. Then everything else gets easier, but we're human. So
Yeah. No, I'm glad you brought that up because it was actually one of the reasons I chose real estate as the thing I wanted to work on, because I had a lot of self-worth issues, but I also had a lot of fear of people. And it was because I'd been assaulted. I told that story on the podcast before. But I realized that real estate would not only teach me the skills that I needed to learn about money, but it also helped me engage with people and give myself basically exposure therapy so that I could make human connections again. And
Yeah.
it's really panned out. It's been a really good thing for me.
Well, I've seen a huge difference in you just in the short time that I've known you. And so it's been awesome. And I'm really impressed with the progress that you've made. So,
Oh, I appreciate that. And
thank
I've
you.
enjoyed having our friendship. We got to have a good talk at Squad Up Summit last year, and we'd see
Yeah.
each other at these real estate meetups that you host. And it's been good.
Yeah. And like I said, like I think for anybody that wants to get into wholesaling, like it's simple but not easy. And there are a lot of steps. But like don't get caught up. Don't be afraid that like you need to know everything from A to Z. Like all you need to know on any deal is, okay, what's step A?
Yeah.
Okay, got that one done. Now what's step B? Okay, got that one done. Now what's step C? Like people try to run through the whole thing right away. And I even did it early on too, but you just literally, okay, this is the first step. Now this is the second step. This is the third step. You just take it one step at a time. And that goes with anything. Doesn't matter, again, which area of real estate you want to make money in.
Well, I think it's even in anything else in life, because I found that was the key to my success with my exercise habit. Was I looked back at things and I realized that a lot of the times the reason I didn't have a habit was because I'd pushed myself so hard that I'd tear my body up real bad. And then I'd have like long periods of recovery. And while you can make progress that way, it was really inhibiting my ability to form a habit. And so what I realized I had to do was just not worry about performance so much as just doing the thing every day and making sure that I got that consistency down. And once the consistency was down, I was able to start making incremental improvements, but because the consistency was there as a foundation. And I think that that's going to be the case with what you're doing with real estate as well. Make sure you learn the basic steps first, build a good habit of doing those things every single day and being consistent with it. And then you can make improvements along that foundation that you've built.
Yep, absolutely. And that's my biggest thing this year that I'm focused on is consistency and being able to do consistent deals. And the nice thing is I have systems in place to help make that easier. I'm a user. If you don't already know what that is or don't follow Jamil Damji or any of that, like I would recommend following Jamil Damji first.
Yeah.
But he talks about this software called Astro Blaster. So I guess backtracking. So
okay,
there's basically two different avenues that you can do in, not two different, there's more, but there's different ways to get leads in wholesaling. So one way is direct to seller, which is pay per lead, which is like Google ads, Facebook ads,
okay,
that kind of stuff that you pay per lead, and having cold callers. So you pull lists of potentially motivated sellers, and then you have either yourself, which I always recommend if you don't have money, like just do it yourself. Or even if you think you have a little bit of money, like just do it yourself first. Like, but yeah, you pull a list of potentially motivated sellers, like pre-foreclosures, divorces, what are those? The
Like tax liens, code
tax,
violations, things like that.
yeah, code violations. That's the word, code violation. So you pull a list of motivated sellers, and then you just call and text them. Like literally, like that's way. So you're going directly to the seller. Driving for dollars is also a direct to seller method. And so the reason why I like driving for dollars lists is because a lot of times those won't necessarily pull up on pre-foreclosure lists or divorce lists or code violations or anything. So sometimes you get like a little bit more cultured list that isn't getting hounded and by every wholesaler, right? But all of those ways work. So that's the thing, is like no matter what route you go direct to seller, they all work. It's just you have to work it, right?
You have to do a lot of it. Yeah.
Yep. And so so direct to seller is one avenue. I follow Jamil Damji, and my buddy bought a Keegley franchise, which is Jamil's wholesaling franchise. And so early on in my wholesaling, I partnered up with him, and I was doing acquisitions and he was doing dispositions. And so we kind of just partnered that way. And so the way that Jamil teaches is working with agents. And then all you're doing is you're leveraging the relationships that they have with their clients and able to, get leads that way. And so I've gotten my flips that way, and I've gotten my wholesales that way, is working through with agents. So it's a little bit different conversation, and it takes a lot more outreach because agents aren't necessarily looking for motivated sellers
Yeah. Yeah.
or distressed properties, but every once in a while they'll have one that, they get from someone in their office or something like that. I see.
Brings up a funny story, actually. One of my first agent calls, I some of these things in my head about creative finance, and I was like, you know what, this is going to work. And I remember I asked her what she thought about sitting down and having a conversation with the seller, like all of us sitting down and having a conversation with the seller. She just blew a gasket. She was like, it's against fair housing laws and all kinds of stuff. And I was like, what are you talking about? I went and looked at fair housing laws later, and they were worried about, like, if I knew specific things about the seller, I might decide I don't want to buy the house, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, wow, that's an exciting kind of a thing to go through. I did not see that coming. It's like I stepped on this landmine that I wasn't even aware of. But sometimes you're going to have conversations like that, right? And it's funny to think about after the fact, but like in the moment, you're like, what do I do? What do I do?
What was funny is I had a conversation with an agent just like 3 days ago, and there was a property. It was a short sale, and called them up, said, hey, I wanted to see if a creative offer might work for the seller. And I just broke it down before he threw any objections at me. I just said, so this is what we look like. We bring money for your commission, pay it out of our pocket. If whatever they're behind on payments, we just look to bring that current, and we'll cover that cost. And then also right now the sellers, because it's a short sale, the seller's not planning on getting any money for their property.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so, we would come in and possibly be able to put money in their pocket at closing. We'll pay for all the closing costs. And by the way, this would help them save a short sale from going on the credit.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, that sounds interesting. Now, granted, they had like crazy amount of liens against them on their property, and so it wouldn't have worked. We would have had to spend a lot of time negotiating these liens off of the property and everything. But in the end, he tried to convince me that buying creative finance deals isn't good for me, and that I should just go buy them just conventionally. And I was like, I don't think, no, like I can solve way more problems doing it this way, and I can get way more properties doing it this way. But anyway.
Yeah. And I don't know, maybe it's because it's a little more complicated and there's a lot of uncertainty. People are scared of risk. It's hard to say. Maybe people's reasons are different, but a lot of it just comes down to the fact that they don't have a lot of the understanding of how it works.
Yep.
And I think that's what it boils down to. But yeah, you're going to have all kinds of experiences, and you got to be open to the adventure of the experience.
Yeah. Goes back to what we're talking about. Just take action.
Yeah. So,
and learn. So,
well, cool. I like that, and some of the things that you went through and how you found solutions to them. What exactly do you think is the plan going forward for Four Sons Properties? What's 2025 hold?
so like I said, I'm just looking to add more consistency this year, just in overall. What that looks like for me is consistently getting like 2 deals a month, but eventually by the end of the year, consistently getting 1 deal a week. And I'm able to do that because I focus on building relationships with the buyers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I also, not only do I work with agents, but I also do what's called reverse wholesaling. So I really get to know my buyers, understand what they're looking for, like what price point, what rehab looks like, what hard money they're using, or what, maybe not hard money, but if they're using IRAs or if they have the cash or whatever, right? Getting to know like exactly what they're looking for, so that when I have a property, I know, oh, this fits these 5 buyers buy boxes, and then I don't have to worry about having a list of 30,000 buyers on my buyers list and doing all that. It's just like, no, I already have the relationship with you. I already know you're looking for this, so I already ran the numbers. I know this number should work for you. If it doesn't, let me know. But like, here's this property on a silver platter to you. So,
well, I like that strategy too, because these buyers are going to value that. If you're bringing them deals consistently, that makes everything easier for them. And why wouldn't someone want to pay you for that?
yeah,
That's really cool.
and
All
that's the
right.
thing.
Well,
Like, I think just from a wholesaler standpoint, I think wholesalers have burned a lot of buyers in the market because, we've been told like there's lots of gurus out there that teach, certain things on how to run your numbers, but the problem is like it's very market specific. It doesn't work for every market.
yeah.
And I think a lot of the buyers that I work with are your convention or traditional like flipper buyers. They use hard money. They use private money for second position unless they have enough for their own. They have so they have holding costs. They have selling costs. And so I think wholesalers just like stopped caring about that as much because there are buyers that can be more aggressive. And so a lot of wholesalers were like, oh, well, this buyer paid 75% of ARV for this one, so I'm going to sell every one of them at 75% now, right? But it doesn't, like, they've forgotten about like how the numbers work sometimes.
Gotcha. Well, and you're going to have a lot of quality differences in any kind of business that people are doing. A lot of the wholesalers that are just starting out are not going to have as much nuance to their understanding. And then you have some of those wholesalers that are really on top of everything and everything in between. And so it's definitely a game of relationships and being able to identify the people that are going to be able to bring you what you need and how you can also benefit them.
Yeah. And I know when I'm sending out deals, like I know I'm probably leaving money on the table, but like I want to be the wholesaler that, I think a lot of wholesalers, especially in Utah, they get 10 properties under contract and they assign 3 or 4 of them, right? Maybe only 2 of them. I want it to be like, if I get a property under contract, 10 properties, I'm going to move 10 properties. Like, I think this mentality of like, just get it under contract and send it out and see if
See if it lands.
Yeah, if you can get any bites. Like, I just think it's dumb.
It feels low effort.
Yeah.
Personally, as a CNC machinist at my W-2 job, I take a lot of pride in making something to very specific metrics. There's some kind of like a craftsman. That's the only word I can think of is pride. Take pride in my work. And I think that if wholesalers were to do that, they'd kind of have the mentality that you're talking about, where if you lock in 10 deals under contract as part of your professional pride to be able to assign those 10 properties as well.
Yeah.
Well, that's really cool. I like the fact that you're going for that and that you're looking for 2 deals a month and eventually 1 deal a week. hopefully we can get people aware of you with the podcast, and people can kind of help you, and maybe you can help teach people that are looking to learn. In fact, do you have any kind of recommendations for resources or places people could go if they're just starting out so that they could learn how to do these things? What's step A? Where did they first start taking action?
YouTube University is actually a pretty decent resource, especially if you have no idea. The cautionary tale with YouTube University is like there's a million different wholesalers, real estate investors that you can follow and learn from. Follow the one that like you connect with. Like obviously, you know, I love Pace Morby, I love Jamil Damji, I love that whole vibe, and Jerry Norton, Brent Daniels. Like I love those guys, but like podcasts like Jeff Rappaport's the Creative Finance Podcast. Like find someone that speaks to you, right? There are some that are like no excuses and just, you know, stop being a baby and blah 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 blah. Like if you need that, cool, go that route. That doesn't vibe with me, but go that route. Like whatever will get you to take action is who you should learn from. But then also, you know, if you've done YouTube University and you're like, I still don't know what to do, like come to the Squat Up meetup. Go to a RIA meetup, a local RIA meeting. Go to like find who like a Facebook group and say, hey, is there any get-togethers that, you know, for learning this stuff, or like meet people in your local market and learn from them. Like I love sharing knowledge that I have and passing it on, because some people way wiser and further along than me have lent me their knowledge, right? And so I pass it on to somebody, hoping that I can get them to a point, and then they can pass it on to somebody else. So yeah, so YouTube University, if you don't know, I highly recommend meeting people in person in your local area and just vibing. Now, keep in mind, I always say trust but verify. Like it's okay to trust somebody, but sometimes they're just full of hot air and they haven't done a deal, or they're just looking to steal your leads or whatever. But trust but verify.
Exactly. I think that's good advice. I also think that you should be prepared to be a small fish in a very big pond. Prepare for that feeling and understand that that's completely fine. Just be where you're at. Everyone was a beginner at some point, and just take action and start growing.
Yeah, and like the honest thing is, like, you can be vulnerable if you've never done a deal.
Yeah.
Like go to these meetups, go meet somebody in person. Be like, honestly, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like I feel like there's all this information coming at me, but I don't know what to do with it. And like if you're vulnerable, instead of going in like, oh man, like I've done 10 deals and, you know, I know this buyer and this person and blah blah blah, like that's not going to get you anywhere. Be vulnerable with where you are right now. Like people want to help people. I truly believe that. Like and being able to be vulnerable and authentic to who you are, then guess what? People will just want to help you just to help you. Like, and like the ones that don't want to help you, cool. Like move on. Like don't take it personal. Like understand that that's something with them, has nothing to do with you, and move on to the next one. Like,
well, and this is actually a lesson I learned as a child. I wanted to be friends with everybody. It didn't take very long to understand that not everyone wants to be friends with me. And it took even longer to understand that's okay. Like you don't have to do deals with everybody that's there. You just have to find the people that you can connect with that are going to want to help you for the vulnerability you exhibit. And if that's not 100% of people, that's completely fine. You're going to find people that are going to help you.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, awesome. Where can people connect with you, Sione?
So I'm not on social media that much, but you can find me on Facebook. I think it's the.Sione Inoke is, or the.Sione.Inoke is my tag. On Instagram, it's also the.Sione.Inoke. I'm not on there a lot. So if you hit me up, I might check it once a week. So if I get back to you late, maybe it's once every other week. If I get back to you late, I apologize. But you can always, like, call and text is easier. So, I mean, I'll just give everybody my phone number. Now, keep in mind, this is my business line, so it's not my personal cell phone, but you can always call me at 385-503-4344. Text and email or text and calls are easiest way to get a hold of me. Just introduce yourself. Say, hey, my name's so-and-so. Heard you on the podcast. Would love to ask you questions. Cool. I will answer any questions. So
Awesome. I know that you also told me that you had a link for Astro Blaster. Would you like to share that as well, or?
yeah, so Astro Blaster is the system that I use for reaching out to agents. And it's amazing. Like what they built, I give credit to Andy Wrong and his team. Just amazing, just what they've been able to build. I do have a link. It is the Astro. Well, yeah, it's funny characters and stuff, but my name's in there
I can go
somewhere.
ahead and include it in the YouTube description if people want to look for it there.
Yeah. So if you sign up, you can use that link. I get some sushi money. So I've never really given it out, but if anybody is interested, I'm happy to answer any questions about Astro Blaster. You can ask me, and happy to help out any way I can. So
Okay. Well, there you have it. And is there anything you'd like to say to the audience before we end the interview today?
I love you all, not just because it's Valentine's Day, but you are amazing, and just listening to this podcast means that you want better for yourself, and like you're on the right path. So keep going, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions.
Well, thank you very much, you guys. Thank you, Sione, for being on the show today. This has been the Pot of Gold podcast, where we talk about finances, wealth generation, and real estate investing. I'd just like to end with the fact that I'm grateful for everybody that takes their time and their attention and they give it to my show. So thank you, guys.